Hello friends, this is Don, and I am the Appalachian Rambler. Today we are at Kings Mountain National Military Park in Kings Mountain, South Carolina. This is the site of a pivotal battle in the American Revolutionary War. It has great significance for East Tennessee and the early settlers of East Tennessee. For many of, or most of the men that fought in the Battle of Kings Mountain on the Patriot side came from what is now East Tennessee and parts of Southwest Virginia. Speaking personally, I have a rich connection to the Over the Mountain men, as they were called, that left Fort Watauga around the Elizabethton area and marched over 100 miles here for the Battle of Kings Mountain against the British Army and their loyalists, along with Colonel Ferguson. I have, so far in researching my family heritage, I have 6 grandfathers that fought here at Kings Mountain for the Patriots. Who knows, I may find more. But today we're going to take a little tour of the Visitor Center. There is a 1.5-mile walking path around the battlefield, as well as a commemorative obelisk that we will get to. And hopefully we will be able to see a short movie here in the Visitor Center. The biggest thing for you as a viewer that you're going to enjoy is I'm going to speak very little on this tour, for there's an interactive display in the Visitor Center. I do not want to disrupt other people's visit by my talking. Plus, it is very self-explanatory. There are these talking exhibits. So when I do get into the Visitor Center, I will not be speaking. So you can be thankful of that. So I'll take off here and we'll head toward the Visitor Center. Okay, here's our nice approach to the Visitor Center. Visitor Center doesn't look too impressive, but it's pretty nice. This stonework is exceptional. A lot of people, I believe a lot of people just come out this park just to relax and maybe get a little bit of walking, walk their dogs.
Too much one time. That depends on the state. How does it feel to have your different laws? Too much one time.
What time does the movie start? Is it just recent? No, I was trying to ask them. Here's the pamphlet. What time? Does the movie just continually play or something?
It's on demand. You can start it right now if you want.
So do we start it?
No, we'll start it. You just
Okay.
go on in and have a seat.
I didn't know if this sounds weird, like when you sit down and start or something.
Yeah.
I've watched it, but he hasn't, so. I'll check and then we can do the
Attention visitors, This announcement that all the
Yeah.
films interested in watching our 25-minute
Okay, they got it.
presentation film. The film will begin playing in the auditorium momentarily.
Come
All
here.
those interested in film should head over to the auditorium at this time.
We're going to duck into the auditorium here for a little short movie. about the Battle of Kings Mountain.
Left earlier.
It is the 5th year of the War for America. Two unlikely-looking armies cut their way through the wilderness. Wearing frontier hunting shirts, they carry knives and tomahawks. Many carry the same guns they used to shoot at wolves and deer. Those loyal to the British Crown wear pine twigs in their hats. Those who call themselves American patriots have slipped a piece of paper into theirs. It is the only way to tell one side from the other. Until a few months ago, these men were neighbors. These two rough and ill-equipped militias have no idea they are about to change the course of a war fought far to the north by far more imposing armies. Here, in the backwoods of the Carolinas, on an isolated hilltop known as Kings Mountain, they will turn the tide of the war and end one of the bloodiest years of the American Revolution. "1780 has been a dark year for the Patriot cause. It is the year of Benedict Arnold's treason, a year of starvation for General George Washington's ragged little army at Morristown, New Jersey, and it is a year of unrelenting defeat for Patriot forces. The British commander in North America, Sir Henry Clinton, attempts to ease the demands on his troops. He will shift the war to the American South, where sizable support from civilian loyalists is expected. British regiments sweep through South Carolina. They establish a chain of posts from Georgetown to Augusta on the Savannah River to Fort 96 on the western frontier. In the forefront of the British advance is Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Tarleton. He commands the British Legion, a mixed force of cavalry and light infantry renowned for its ruthlessness. It is Tarleton who is ordered to head off a small contingent of Americans riding from Virginia. Colonel Abraham Buford, an experienced militia officer, realizes he has come too late to aid American troops in Charleston. He turns his 350 Virginia Patriots towards the north, with Tarleton and 250 cavalrymen in close pursuit. They catch up with Buford near the North Carolina border at a small settlement called the Waxhaws. The Americans have no chance.
As the battle develops, Buford realizes that surrender is his only option. He raises a white flag.
Tarleton's dragoons mix with the Americans, cutting and slashing with their sabers. All calls for quarter are ignored. 113 Virginians are killed, and another 150 so badly wounded that they are left for dead on the field. Tarleton's loss is but 5 killed and 12 wounded.
From this day on, this would be known as Tarleton's Quarter.
News of the victory reaches Clinton in Charleston. Now confident that loyalists throughout the Carolinas will rally to their king, he sends his assurances to Lord Germain.
With great pleasure I further report to your lordship that the inhabitants from every quarter repair to declare their allegiance to the king. I may venture to assert that there are few men in South Carolina who are not either our prisoners or in arms with us.
Though there are pockets of Patriot resistance in South Carolina, many settlers are Tory sympathizers, loyal to the Crown. The remaining population is comprised of insular clans of rough Scots-Irish frontiersmen. They are expected to sit out any conflict between Britain and her former colonies.
Here in the South, there are a lot of things to attract the British. Not only the food and horses, but also great manpower, and they believe the majority of the Southerners are loyal to the king and the royal government.
A new commander will now take control of the Southern Theater. Clinton turns over command to General Charles Cornwallis, a man he has little admiration for. Clinton orders Cornwallis to augment his forces with Carolinians still loyal to the king and suppress this rebellion once and for all. Before he departs, Clinton creates the position of Inspector of Militia in the Southern Provinces. His choice for this independent command, a 35-year-old major of the 71st Highland Regiment named Patrick Ferguson. Ferguson is ordered to raise a force of 4,000 loyalist militia and to put 1,000 of them into the field ready for action. Ferguson is a hero to his men, who affectionately call him the Bulldog, but is considered a wild man by his superiors. Few officers in the British service are as well known as this Scottish major. Ferguson began his military career in 1759 with a commission in the Royal North British Dragoons. After contracting a deadly fever fighting in the West Indies, Ferguson devotes his convalescence to the study of firearms.
The British were using smooth-bore Brown Bess muskets. They were extremely inaccurate.
Ferguson, a noted hunter and marksman widely regarded as the best shot in the British Army, designs a breech-loading rifle. It can be fired quickly and more accurately, and unlike any other weapon of its day, from a prone position. Ferguson is soon on his way to America in command of 100 hand-picked soldiers. He trains them to fire from hidden positions, wear camouflage, and fight in an unheard-of guerrilla style. In the fall of 1777, near present-day Chester, Pennsylvania, in what will be called the Battle of Brandywine, Ferguson finally gets his chance to prove the worth of his riflemen and their unconventional methods.
He had his men prone on the ground, dressed in somewhat camouflaged clothing, and he proved to all of the other officers that his style of fighting was the best. He had the lowest death and wounded ratio of any unit on the field.
It is during a scouting expedition just before this battle that a remarkable incident occurs, one which could potentially change the outcome of the Revolution and American history. A high-ranking American officer rides within 100 yards of where Ferguson is hiding. Captain Patrick Ferguson, the best shot in the British Army, takes careful aim at the American general, who now turns to look at him. The officer's name, General George Washington. Ferguson has Washington and the fate of the American Revolution within his sights. But at the last moment, the Scotsman holds his fire.
As I was within that distance at which in the quickest firing I have seldom missed a sheet of paper, and could have lodged half a dozen balls in him or about him before he was out of my reach. But it was not pleasant to fire at the back of an unoffending individual who was acquitting himself very coolly of his duty, so I let him alone.
Within moments of this gallant act, the Battle of Brandywine is underway. Ferguson is seriously wounded, his right elbow shattered by a rifle ball. In the weeks that follow, Ferguson retrains himself to write with his left hand, then to fence, then to fire a weapon. Unable to signal commands and hold the reins of his horse, he equips himself with a silver whistle and devises a series of signals to direct his troops. Some 9 months after being wounded, Ferguson returns to active duty, having lost his specially designed rifles and guerrilla fighters during his long convalescence. Ferguson still distinguishes himself at the battles of Monmouth and Charleston, drawing the attention of Sir Henry Clinton. In this brave and idiosyncratic leader, Clinton sees a man who can appeal to the Carolina frontiersmen and draw them to the British side. Without consulting his other commanders, Clinton handpicks Ferguson to recruit and command all the militia in the Southern Theater. From the start, Ferguson clashes with Cornwallis and the other British top commander, Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Tarleton, the man who led the killing of the wounded during the recent Waxhaws Massacre. Despite the opposition of Cornwallis and Tarleton, Ferguson's recruitment efforts are a remarkable success. His loyalist militia swells to 4,000 recruits, with more than 1,000 soon in the field under arms. Among the civilians who attach themselves to Ferguson are 2 ladies of questionable repute. They provide a number of services for the personable commander, including washing his linen.
Ferguson had 2 ladies that traveled with him, both with the name of Virginia, Virginia Sowell and Virginia Paul. Some of the soldiers laughed and joked that Ferguson was really a smart man, because no matter which ear he whispered sweet nothings into, he would not call her by the wrong name.
While Ferguson recruits his loyalist militia, Lord Cornwallis advances northward with his main army, establishing a chain of fortified posts throughout South Carolina, at Augusta, at 96, at Rocky Mount, and at Camden. As the British advance, American dissatisfaction grows with General George Washington. The war seems to be dragging on endlessly. Congress, without consulting Washington, assigns command of all Southern forces to General Horatio Gates, called the Hero of Saratoga. Gates, reinforced by North Carolina militia, immediately advances toward the British outpost at Camden. The aggressive general pushes his 3,000 men too hard and too fast. Starving, they begin eating green corn along the march, and many succumb to dysentery. At Camden, Cornwallis awaits the enfeebled army with 1,900 battle-tested veterans. On August 16, 1780, Gates confronts Cornwallis. The battle is over quickly. The Redcoats rout the American militia and cut down the stalwart Continentals. General Gates is among the first to flee the field of battle. His northern laurels, as one wag puts it, turn to weeping willows in the south. Cornwallis claims 800 Americans dead or wounded, and another 1,000 taken prisoner. Then Tarleton and his men arrive, and as in the wake of the Waxhaws massacre, they act without mercy. The victory is complete. The road to North Carolina and beyond is wide open. With the August defeat of the Americans at Camden by the British, the last regular Patriot troops have been routed and driven out. The civilians left behind turn on each other, Patriot sympathizers against those still loyal to the Crown. Guerrilla fighting now rages everywhere. Lootings, burnings, and murders are the order of the day. During a single year, more battles and skirmishes will occur here than in the rest of the colonies combined.
These people know each other. They hate each other. These are old family feuds. Well, revenge runs deep, my friend. These aren't regular troops. These are backwoodsmen.
With the British military on hand to back the Loyalists, the odds are stacked against the South Carolina Patriots. But then, help comes from an unexpected source.
Up to this point, the Scotch-Irish had taken no part in the Revolution. But with Buford's massacre, the war had been brought into their backyards, and they decided that they must do something about it. The Scotch-Irish in the South are the descendants of the defenders of Londonderry and Enniskillen. They have fighting in their blood. They are born warriors.
Even without support from the regular American military, these civilian patriots and Scots-Irish guerrillas are a powerful combination. The rebels quickly become a thorn in the side of the British. Cornwallis likens being in their midst to sitting naked on a hornet's nest. The rebels burn British equipment, destroy supplies. Under cover of darkness, they creep in and garrote the sentries. Though the South is proving difficult to hold, Cornwallis is nonetheless determined to extend the war into North Carolina. He announces a three-pronged thrust northward. The plan will serve a dual purpose, cutting supplies to both the American army in the north and rebels in the south. With the British mobilized, the Patriots send urgent messages asking for reinforcements to block their northward march. On August 18th, at Musgrove's Mill on the Enoree River, the call is answered. Patriot militia pour in from the Carolinas. They converge on Ferguson's men, catching them by surprise. The Loyalist militia endures punishing casualties, 63 dead and 90 wounded. Only 4 Patriots are killed and another 8 wounded. Enraged by the attack, Ferguson composes a warning. He tells the rebels to stay out of the war in the Carolinas or else.
He told the population that he would soon go over the mountain to arrest all the Whig leaders, hang them, destroy them, and lay waste the countryside with fire and sword. This was exactly the threat that was needed to motivate the over-the-mountain men.
The message is received by Colonel Isaac Shelby, one of the rebel leaders. Married to a Scots-Irish woman, Shelby has close ties to the leaders of the clannish over-mountain men. Since the bloody massacre at Waxhaws, they have considered the British a mutual enemy. Shelby saddles his horse and rides some 40 miles to consult with one of his Scots-Irish allies, the leader of the Nolichucky and Watauga River settlements, John Sevier. Shelby and Sevier relay Ferguson's threat to all the Over-Mountain men living in the Blue Ridge Mountain settlements. The rebels do not take lightly Ferguson's threat to subject their homes to fire and sword.
Ferguson's proclamation became a threat that every single rifleman took personally. Now it was their time to wage war against the British.
The rebels are to rendezvous with the Sycamore Shoals of the Watauga River on September 25th. They come with their long rifles, their horses, and their seething anger. They wear fringed and tasseled hunting shirts and carry knives and tomahawks. There is not a uniform, a bayonet, or a tent to be found among them. A veteran of that march later described their mood.
Every man considered himself a soldier. He had his horse and his rifle, which he knew how to use. When fighting came on, everyone fought for himself, officers as well as men. The best officers were those who fought best, as among the Indians, the officers were leaders rather than commanders.
As they cross over the mountains, they are reinforced by another 350 North Carolinians and another 400 South Carolina militiamen. But Ferguson is well informed by Tory spies of the movements of the Over-Mountain men. On October 6th, he sends an urgent dispatch to Lord Cornwallis at Charlotte.
I am on my march toward you by a road leading from Cherokee Ford north of Kings Mountain. 300 or 400 good soldiers, packed dragoons, would finish this business. Something must be done soon.
But Cornwallis, ill with a bad cold, does not respond, even though he is less than 40 miles away. The usually contentious Tarleton also cannot be lured from his sickbed, for he has a fever as well. Whether it is illness or the enmity Ferguson has earned, Ferguson is on his own. He marches his 1,000 men eastward toward Kings Mountain, an isolated peak rising out of the wooded countryside.
Ferguson selected this ground for his battle site because it reminded him of the Castle Hill in Edinburgh, Scotland. It was easy to defend it, he thought.
Throughout the night of October 6th, 910 mounted men, followed by almost as many men on foot, march on Kings Mountain. Ferguson knows they are coming. He could easily retreat the few miles to Cornwallis's encampment at Charlotte, but he will not be moved. Here, at Kings Mountain, he will make his stand. On October 7th, the rebels reach the woods at the base of Kings Mountain.
Now is the time to strike a blow for liberty, to eliminate the British threat in the Carolinas, once and for all. They swarmed around the base of the mountain and began their climb, up over the rocks, through the trees and bushes.
As Ferguson's men prepare for battle, the patriots encircle them. The most respected rebel leaders are here. Among them is Colonel Isaac Shelby, the man who first received Ferguson's warning not to join the Patriots. He has recruited several other rebel commanders who bring 400 Virginians and 160 Carolina veterans. Ferguson, who has estranged both British commanders, Colonel Tarleton and Lord Cornwallis, is on his own. Colonel Shelby's instructions to his men are brief.
Don't wait for the word of command. Let each one of you be his own officer, taking every care you can of yourselves. If in the woods, shelter yourselves and give them Indian play. Advance from tree to tree, pressing the enemy, and killing and disabling all you can.
The resolute Americans push forward up the hill from all sides. Their watchword, shouted as they charge, is Buford, the name of the commander whose troops were butchered at Waxhaws by the British. Ferguson's men hurriedly form ranks and fire volley after volley, but their position atop the crest sends their shots high. Ferguson, the best shot in the British Army, an innovator of rifle design, will fight this battle with only the inaccurate Brown Bess musket and the bayonet.
Ferguson was trying to use the bayonet. He did successfully drive the Americans down at least one time, but he had to retreat back onto the hilltop in order to hold his forces in some kind of formation.
Ferguson's men charged down the hill, only to have the Americans disappear before them, falling back to reload and attack again.
Ferguson finally realizes that the bayonet charges are unsuccessful against the mountain men who are ascending the mountaintop.
The Americans' Pennsylvania rifles prove far more accurate than British muskets, and the Tory ranks begin to thin. Ferguson rides along the lines, roaring encouragement.
Ferguson, with his sword in his left hand and his silver whistle in his mouth, leaking shrill commands across the mountaintop, sees Loyalist forces raising the white flag. Then he charges up, knocks the white flag out of their hands.
As the Americans surge toward the crest, they are met by the sight of Virginia Paul, Ferguson's mistress, riding toward them. Her compatriot, Virginia Sal, has been killed atop the mountain. The troops allow her to pass, and there are those who say she stops long enough to inform the Americans of what Ferguson is wearing, a checkered shirt. The Americans push forward, and Ferguson's desperate men soon find their lines pressed back to back.
His men start to retreat, gather in a small circle there on the top of the mountain ridge. As the Patriot forces ascend, they have this group of encircled men caught in a crossfire.
Ferguson can do nothing to stop the increasing panic among his thinning ranks. He battles on, refusing to consider surrender. With his silver whistle and checkered shirt, he makes a fine target for American marksmen.
At least 9 men successfully got off shots at Ferguson. It is said that 7 hit him. That sudden blast of 7 heavy balls lifted Ferguson up out of the saddle and slammed him from the horse. And as he went down, his foot hung in the stirrup.
On the mountain crest, the encircled Tories try to surrender, but the Americans pay no heed.
They fire deadly shots among the group, even though the men are waving the white flag. The Patriot forces keep yelling, "Give them Buford's play, give them Buford's play."
But this time it is the Americans who give no quarter. Rifle, tomahawk, and knife take a terrible toll among the helpless Tories, until Shelby and the other colonels regain control over their men. It had all taken but an hour. The Americans have lost less than 50 men, while killing 150 British, wounding an equal number, and taking some 800 prisoners. The Overmountain men and Carolina militia, undisciplined to begin with, now become increasingly unmanageable once the battle is won. On Saturday, October 14th, a court-martial is convened in the forest, and 36 Tories are sentenced to death. By torchlight, the Patriot mob hangs their prisoners in groups of 3. Declares one Patriot militiaman,
"Would to God every tree in the wilderness bore such fruit as that!"
Shelby and the commanders finally manage to regain control over their men, but not before 9 Tories are hanged, their bodies left dangling from the trees. The Patriot forces quickly disperse, the Overmountain men heading back across the Blue Ridge into the backcountry. But they have turned the tide. News of the victory sweeps the country. Rebels flock to join the cause. British loyalists rethink their position. The British will find no help from Tory sympathizers now.
Up until this moment, they had always believed that the great army of the British Empire could not be defeated. But this was their first opportunity to see that the determined Americans could and possibly would win this war.
Thomas Jefferson is among those who recognizes the importance of the battle fought on Kings Mountain.
That memorable victory was the joyful annunciation of that turn in the tide of success which terminated the Revolutionary War with the seal of independence.
The British push northward is cut off. Supplies will continue to flow to Americans in the north and south. A prime opportunity has been lost.
The Battle of Kings Mountain suddenly changes the strategy of Cornwallis. With his left flank totally destroyed or captured, he's forced to retreat to Winnsboro, South Carolina for the winter, where he would try to gather his forces and assume his invasion of the north. This in turn gave the Patriot forces time to regroup from their major defeats at Charleston and Camden.
Cornwallis is shaken. All his grand plans are in disarray. American militiamen flock to the American banner. At the Cowpens on January 17, 1781, troops under the command of Colonel Daniel Morgan crushed Banastre Tarleton's legion, killing over 100 and capturing 700 more. Cornwallis turns northward toward his fate in the complete surrender of his army at Yorktown, Virginia on October 19, 1781. To Sir Henry Clinton in New York, the road to Yorktown began at Kings Mountain.
The instant I heard of Major Ferguson's defeat, I foresaw most of the consequences likely to result from it. The check so encouraged the spirit of rebellion in the Carolinas that it could never be humbled. It was the first link in a chain of evils that followed each other in regular succession until at last ended in the total loss of America.
After the battle, settlers avoid Kings Mountain. It has become overrun with wolves who feed on the shallowly buried bodies of Ferguson's men. Eventually, a monument will be built on the mountaintop for the warriors who fought there. But a more fitting epitaph, one that could be applied to loyalist and patriot alike, was written by Major Patrick Ferguson at the beginning of the war.
The length of our lives is not at our command, however much the manner of them may be. If our Creator enable us to act the part of honour, and to conduct ourselves with spirit, probity, and humanity, the change to another world, whether now or 50 years hence, will not be for the worse.
As I said previously, I'm not going to be doing any talking in here, so all of you are going to be getting a little bit of a relief here.
If you're gonna buy anything, buy one that sycamore shoals.
pretty cool, I like that. That pottery thing, if they had something like that, I wouldn't mind something like that.
Simple furniture, like the wooden cradle, fills the space. Wooden bowls, straw baskets, and redware bowls are placed on the mantel and corner cupboard. Drying herbs hang from the walls. Clothing draped from pegs around the sides of the room. To the right, a flight of stairs leads to the sparsely furnished second floor. This exhibit is entitled The British Army's Southern Campaign. Before you is a life-sized background battle scene of a dozen riflemen in drab farm clothes and shrouded in smoke, crouched and firing to the right. Portraits of 3 British commanders are on the left and 3 Patriot commanders on the right. The British commanders feature small oval-framed paintings of British Major General Charles Cornwallis, Commanding Officer, British Forces in the South. Major Patrick Ferguson, Inspector of Militia, British Army, and Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton, Commanding Officer, British Legion, British Army. Above them is a quote from Cornwallis, which reads, "It may be doubted by some whether the invasion of North Carolina may be a prudent measure, but I am convinced it is a necessary one, and that if we do not attack that province, we must give up both South Carolina and Georgia." The 3 Patriot commanders on the right feature similar oval portraits of Major General Benjamin Lincoln, Commanding Officer, American Forces, Charleston, South Carolina, Major General Horatio Gates, Commanding Officer, American Forces in the South after the fall of Charleston, and Major General Nathaniel Greene, Commanding Officer of the Southern Army in October 1780. Through the winter of 1780, scattered and demoralized troops left in the South and devised a plan against British commander Lord Cornwallis. Greene's plan was fight, get beat, rise and fight again. Above the portraits is a quotation from General Greene, which reads, "Until my Colonel Army collect his army At this exhibit, you're greeted by a large illustration some 8 feet high and 14 feet around titled Over Mountain Campaign. Just a few feet in from the left is depicted a weary Over Mountain man mounted on a brown steed with a bedroll, a pouch, and other gear packed over the animal's rear. In a display case just outside the tree are a variety of artifacts from the battle. An Over Mountain man now shares the story of his march to Kings Mountain.
I may be tired after a rugged mountain crossing, but even so, I am more determined than ever to rout every British loyalist. After the Battle of Camden, South Carolina, good Patriot militiamen and kinsmen fled in our direction, over mountain into our lands. We took them into our communities and gave them shelter. Needless to say, the British were displeased. They demanded we take a loyalty oath to their king. We have refused. We are independent people and proud of it. So when the call came to surprise and attack Ferguson, we hesitated not a moment to leave our homes and fields and gather with others from neighbouring counties for the trek over the mountains. More than 1,000 of us heeded the call. Again, over 300 miles we traveled, 14 days, and tours of the
Well, if you want to watch all this, this is kind of what they talked about.
This large illustration is titled Patriot Militia. It shows 3 men fighting from different stances protected by a tree. One of these men is braced against a gnarled tree trunk, aiming his rifle to the right. At the left are 2 illustrations of other men. In front, a man in a tan hunting frock fires his flintlock to the right. Behind him, to the left, a man in a long blue coat leans to his left, holding a rifle at the ready. Each man has a scrap of white paper. This large illustration is titled Tactics, Musket versus Long Rifle. In the background, a realistic large illustration depicts a group of patriots in everyday overalls, shirts, and hats. They're marching through a dense forest behind a mounted patriot half hidden by a thick tree trunk. To the right, another militiaman leads the way, both hands gripping his rifle at a slight incline. A monitor is suspended between the displayed musket and rifle, and an audio-described video demonstrates the difference between these 2 weapons. In this demonstration, 2 soldiers are firing the different weapons used at Kings Mountain.
Ready, take aim, fire,
On the left, a rifleman loads a rifle, a highly accurate hunting weapon. On the right, a soldier loads a musket. The difference is speed versus accuracy. The rifleman begins by uncapping his horn and pouring 1 shot worth of powder into his measure. This is then poured down the barrel. He then takes a patch and uses a loading bar into the muzzle. And slowly zoom down as the ball hits very tightly. Lastly, he must prime the fan of his horn. In the meantime, the other soldier takes out a cartridge from his bag. He may charge with ball power. This large illustration bears the title Royal Provincials and Loyalist Militia. Depicted are provincial regular uniform and civilian loyalist outfit. On the far left, a loyalist militiaman wears a brown coat over his faded light blue waistcoat. He holds a musket at his waist in both hands and scowls directly at us from under a black tricorn hat. His grizzled face is thin and haggard. At the loyalist right, a royal provincial soldier wears long white trousers, stained on the left knee, a red jacket trimmed in blue, and a cocked hat. He is aiming a bayoneted musket. The provincials were the only loyalist troops dressed in the traditional red coats at Kings Mountain. Of the bayonet, we learned that its triangular shape and dull edges made bayonet wounds hard to treat. Above this figure appears a small reprint of a New York newspaper advertisement offering a $20 bounty for 2 years' service to His Majesty.
Polish rebels against the king's government.
Okay, friends, we're going to have to end this video here today because of time restraints. I hope all of you enjoyed the brief movie we got to see, plus our tour of the museum. I know I learned a few things, but as I said, I regret we did not have enough time to explore more of the actual grounds, to see the monument, the obelisk. It's the top of the battlefield. Also to see Major Ferguson's gravesite. And also I'd like to give you a view of the topography of the land so you get a little better feeling of the hill that the Patriots had to go up in order to engage the British. And it will also give you a feel as to why the British strategy of a bayonet charge was ineffective. But I will be doing that second part of this video. I'm also working on another project of a video of Colonel John Sevier. I also have another video of renovating an historic mill from the 1700s, which was owned and operated by a Broyles family. And in conjunction with that, there is going to be a DAR cemetery dedication of the grave sites of these Broyles brothers. I think that will be very interesting. So, please like, share, and subscribe so you do not miss any of this. And I'll see you on down the road.